Okay, so what's the holistic version?
Yeah.
How does one balance themselves out?
Well, can there be a holistic version? I mean,
Right?
we think of extroverted thinking effectiveness just so one-sided like that, with one note. People probably have a hard time even imagining what could it mean? What could it even look like holistic? What would that be?
Yeah, well, and I think some people who use a holistic version of extroverted thinking have mistyped themselves. I think that's not uncommon. And sometimes is maybe extroverted feeling. Okay, so again, the holistic version is more receptive. It's more flexible. It's taking in a bigger territory, as we've talked about before. It's like that Shambhala meditation, as we mentioned in other podcasts, where you see a more periphery, but you don't see anything necessarily really in focus like you do with the analytic. So it shows up on all the small things in a person's life. It's more about the task level attention to detail. It's wanting to do things well. It's not just wanting an outcome, but it wants a good outcome. It wants to do it more of a craftsman. And so it doesn't have as much insistence on, like you said, KPIs on everything. It's more about like how well are things being done.
So it's more about quality than results.
Yes, exactly.
Like the quality matters. How we get the results matters just as much as the results matter.
Yes. Yeah. More
Process, quality, putting the time, like the artistry, the artisan nature of it, the craftsmanship of something.
Yes. And facts, figures, charts, and diagrams, all of those things are just as important, but it also comes with restraint, thriftiness, a responsibility to fulfill tasks. It comes with a little bit more of a sense of like a duty to it, as opposed to a person using extroverted thinking to make something happen. It's more like being used by extroverted thinking. It's almost like they're submissive to the function, right? And that they're responsible to the function and responsible for making things happen. And so there's more of a focus on being duty oriented towards making this end game. Not just get it done, but also be like,
do it well.
Do it well and do it within a certain time frame and make sure we didn't spend too much money on it and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, and I would also say maybe in here too, we could inject this idea of if you want to go fast, go alone. That might be more of like the analytic extroverted thinking or effectiveness. If you want to go far, go together. There's probably also more opening to working, with larger teams, letting other people share their metrics and what their addition is to the experience. In other words, there's a little bit more of like maybe there's a bigger picture being taken into of what could be accomplished as well.
Yep.
On a longer timeline.
Yeah, and it can be applied to anything. Like all this idea of like, it doesn't have to be like spreadsheets and accounting forms. It can be like writing songs or music, right? It can be any project they throw themselves into. They want to make sure that it's quality. They want to make sure that they're doing it well. And there is a sense of like, if we need to do it in groups, that's fine. Again, the holistic version tends to be bottom up. It's less and it's more egalitarian. So it doesn't step into those positions of leadership as quickly. If they're going to be responsible for something big, they actually might end up going it alone a little bit, like doing it more on their own. And that might be one of the reasons why a person with this holistic extroverted thinking might mistype themselves as a different type.
Yeah.
Because they are more comfortable doing those kinds of things alone. But if they are going to go far and go together, it's going to be a little bit more egalitarian, a little less top down. And that said, they're still extroverted thinking. So it's all boxes and procedures all the way, right? And that includes in relationships. So they're still going to, manage relationships like they manage everything else. There's going to be a sense of craftsmanship and process and procedures and boxes and, right ways of doing things. And so the downside to this is, as Dario mentions, it can get out of hand as pedantic, fastidious, compulsive around facts, details, and order. So this is the extroverted thinking that is not a slapdash and go and hungry hippo. This is the one that like wants control and make sure that everything's done right and might control people to make sure that things are done right. It might be, it's not necessarily this like kumbaya version. It's more paying attention to the little things as opposed to just the big things. And there's a certain order to how those things get done. And that includes in relationships, and we do it right.
By the way, we are starting something very new here at Personality Hacker. Now, you might be listening to this years from now, and so it's something that's gone on for a while. But as of the time of this recording, it's fairly new. We're starting up an experience of our podcast live once a week online in a virtual format. So what we're doing is we're gathering a group of like minds to come together once a week to watch this podcast together. And then right afterward, we have a membership program where people can come. It's called a personality quest. And we talk about the podcast right afterward. We unpack the learning from it, how we can apply it to our lives. And then we give the entire group of people that have gathered an assignment or a challenge for that week, some journal prompts and some reflection, but also a challenge that week to go test out in their real life, to go explore in the world. All of us are going to do the same challenge that week. And we come back the following week, we talk about it, unpack it, and we get the learning from it. And every week getting together to do this, we've already been doing a few weeks. It's been fantastic. I've loved doing it. It's awesome to see people come and gather live to watch the podcast, talk about it, and go do challenges in their own lives. You should be a part of this. If you're listening or you're watching, we want you to be part of it. Currently, we're doing it on Sundays. You can find out more information and be part of Personality Quest if you come over to personalityhacker.com/quest. And you can learn all about the quests and what we're doing there and get yourself involved, because I think you're going to love this experience, especially if you've loved the podcast and you love personality types and personal growth and the intersection of those two things. It's one of the things that I am super excited about going forward with. So, and there's going to be some live elements to that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've got planned around this. But right now we're just starting with these weekly gatherings, and I'd love for you to be involved.
He mentions that if you think of the definition of holistic, he says you could picture it as quietly crafting a fine watch under moonlight, which is kind of, it's like a romantic way of looking at it, but you can see that, like the craftsmanship that goes into a watch, the doing it even at night in the moonlight where you're still trying to make it happen in a certain timely manner. Like it's a real focus on the end game, but the process that gets you there.
When you say watchmaking, for some reason, it makes me think of Switzerland and Germany. And the moment I think of Germany, I think, man, that's a country that really embodies, I believe, extroverted thinking. And I'm like, but United States embodies extroverted thinking as well, effectiveness. And then I went, oh my goodness, Germany and US might be a great compare and contrast. Germany's got more of that craftsman, do it right. You go to Germany and all their systems are like perfect and designed really well. You come to the United States, we have some pretty good systems. They're a little slapdash, but we move way faster and we have bigger things and we produce way more. We're much more analytically focused with our general energy of extroverted thinking or effectiveness. But Germany's more craftsman around it.
Yes.
But that's still the same energy.
I think that's a great example. And I mean, what I know of Germany, I've only been once, but
same here.
Yeah. But it did seem like it was pretty, like it was sort of crazy. Like we got out of the airplane and went down this tube where there was at least 3 different people ensuring that we know exactly where to go, even though there was only really one place to go. And when we left the tube that was leading us out of the terminal, a bus had driven up and the person had parked the doors, like the open doors lined up outside the tube. And
it was absurd.
Just walk straight on. And it was like, I mean, it was just crazy. So yes, I think that the United States would have a more analytic extroverted thinking effectiveness bent, and Germany would have a more holistic extroverted thinking.
Again, I'm sure Germans are like, that's not true. It's totally different. But
please correct us, Germans.
My experience of Germany.
That's right. That's what it feels like.
For the purposes of this podcast, let's assume I'm right.
That's right. Let's just pretend. So exactly. There's Daria says they maintain a practical, predictable, and somewhat impersonal kind of integrity.
Yeah.
All right. To just make it happen and make it done well. It's the receptive quality is in this. The person is subordinating extroverted thinking or effectiveness in service of something else. So I said that they're kind of being used by it, but actually what they're doing is they're harnessing this function in behalf of something else, as opposed to it almost being the goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
a means to an end.
Yeah. When it comes to factors like speed, profit, usefulness, and accuracy, this user is prioritizing usefulness and accuracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it could almost look like introverted thinking at times, I'm guessing.
It's
less productive. It's more precision focused.
Yep.
And so mistypes could happen here potentially.
I suspect when extroverted thinking users or effectiveness users think they're TP types, it's because they're using the holistic version.
Yeah.
Right. But when you bring them together, you end up having both the ability to make big things happen and having that sort of aggression or assertion for big goals and leadership and explaining and all of that. While at the same time being able to have your mind on or your eye on resource and make sure there's a practicality to it and a frugalness to it, not just an ability to gain resource and, have power or money or whatever, but also something that people are going to be able to use and that has a sense of integrity about it. And, there's like a good marriage there. If a person doesn't have enough holistic extroverted thinking or effectiveness, like we said, like any measurement will do, including body count. So that holistic comes in to go, well, that's not okay. Like, that's not right. That's not useful, right? The process is as important as the end game. So you've got to have some of that holistic in there as well. Whereas when you're overly holistic extroverted thinking or effectiveness, that's when you get a little too rigid. Like there's a rigidity and it has to be done this way. And like there's a control and like putting people into kind of like the boxes of usefulness. And the analytic can come in and go, done is better than perfect. Yeah. Right? Like just make it happen. It's okay. You can let go of some of the control over it. You can let go of some of the precision of it. And I think it's the analytic users that are better at communicating and explaining. And holistic extroverted thinking can use some of that. It can use some of that ability to communicate more effectively.
And I think that we, at least here in the United States, need more of the holistic extroverted thinking. And you, if you're listening and you're super analytic focused as an extroverted thinking user, TJ, man, could you lean into the holistic? It would certainly get me non-plastic products that break 3 months after I buy them. Right. It drives me crazy. It's like, yeah, you got the product created, but it's garbage. There's no craftsmanship. It doesn't work after a while. It breaks. It's cheaply made.
Right.
We have no craftsmanship anymore in our manufacturing or our production or things. Like it's really going away. And I think that energy is missing.
Right.
Whereas the Swiss watch is that elegant design and craftsmanship that I love so much.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So a combination of these two things is how high quality things are made and created to scale.
Yeah.
Right. And the analytic is self-driving. The holistic usually allows other things to drive.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of reason to have both sides of this to balance it out a little bit.
So that's extra.